Thank you. Welcome back to our committee of the whole meeting. We're going to move on to our report from administration, 5.3. Capital project, Switzer Drive asphalt rehabilitation. And I'll put that over to our CAO.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn that over to Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all of council. So we thought it was a good time to come in and check in with you on this project. And in the report, I'll go through a few items specifically I would like council to focus in on and provide their thoughts. This project is in our current budget at $3 million. We are hoping to get funding from a couple of other sources. The first one is we have applied Alberta Transportation for their Resource Road grant. And then the second one is we have an existing agreement with West Fraser where they are allowed to haul overweight vehicles on Switzer Drive in exchange for providing infrastructure dollars for support of those trucks. So those are the additional funds. And the balance of the project is to be funded by what was called MSI, which is now called LGFF. We actually got approval to fund that even without the resource road. So if we were unsuccessful in getting a resource road, it is an available option to council to carry on with this project, funding it all out of MSI. However, those MSI dollars can be spent on a large number of projects. You'd have to think about whether or not that's something you want to do. So we broke the project down into 3 parts just to sort of describe it for council. However, we've attached the 60% drawing so that you were able to look at anything that you might be interested in. And if you had any questions on those, I would be happy to try and answer them. The points I wanted you to focus in on is, so the first one is the sewer line and the risk on this project with the sewer line. There is a sewer line crossing very close to the Kelly Road intersection, and it is a large diameter concrete sewer line. And we were hoping to camera it as part of the 2023 CCTV inspections, but we weren't able to access the line because it flows 24 hours a day too full to get a camera in it. So we have sort of 3 choices on that item. We can proceed without knowing its condition. That is something council can choose to do. We do that lots. I'm not saying that that's a bad decision. I'm just saying that needs to come from council if you want to run that risk, because it's one of those, it's a very low risk, but high consequence. So that's why I wanted council to specifically consider that. If you want us to get a condition of the sewer line, one of the options we have found is that we can actually do ground penetrating radar. At a very high level, we think that would cost about $40,000 to get done, and we probably do quite a bit of the line all the way from there. In pieces, we would do from there all the way to the lagoon. If you're bringing someone out with that expensive equipment, you would do enough to know what the condition of the sewer line is right from there all the way to the sewage lagoon. So that's one option we could do. The other one is you could actually isolate that piece of line so that you could camera it. And that you would have to actually plug it off at 2 manholes and pump the sewage around as you keep it plugged off so that you could get the camera in there. Obviously, that would get you the best look at the line, but it's the most expensive option. And really, I think that's excessive dollars for the information that you'd be getting. The next one I wanted to talk to you about is the resource grant. So we've applied for $913,000 on this project. I did phone and talk with the grant person with Alberta Transportation after I wrote this report. They anticipate getting answers out by May 15th, so that's quite a ways away yet. Instead, we wrote a very good application. We checked all the boxes. And it's certainly being considered. So that was what I thought was a positive phone call, except for the point that we won't find out till May 15th. Overhead lighting. So when we looked at this project, we thought that as administration, we felt that this was something that we should do, get better lighting along Switzer. It is one of our most important roads. However, you know, the lighting that is there is still forming a function. And I thought that the council could provide some insight on whether or not they wanted us to keep the lighting included in the project.
Councilor McGill?
I can wait till the end if Mr. McLaughlin would rather finish first.
Would you rather finish your presentation or?
Yeah, I'm almost done. Well, let's just finish it. Okay, and then the last one is Mondi is certainly going to be doing a lot of construction over the next few years. And it's one of those things, you know, do we get done first? Do we do it while they're doing construction and you know, and be just part of it, or do you wait till afterwards? It's just, we haven't really flushed out or had any good long conversations with them on this project. And so it was just another thing I wanted to throw out there that is another consideration on this project, considering we'll be doing basically right in front of their front gates.
Yeah, did you want to be put in queue or?
Chair, if I could, just to add to that point, we have spoken with Monty a number of times about the project, if they had any input in it, and as of right now, they said that they don't have any input in it because they don't have their preliminary design, but they are looking at, I think, relatively large reconfiguration of how things work in that area, even possibly new entrances and those types of things, but they have no comment at this point in time, but I just wanted council to be aware of that.
Go ahead, sir.
And then the last thing that I wanted to add, since the report's been written, is following that conversation with Alberta Transportation and not knowing whether or not we get that grant until May 15th. That's potentially could push our tender date till, you know, not tendering until mid-May, not closing tenders till at least into June. That is starting to be late for this year's construction. I think that it would still be a good idea to proceed with tendering, especially if funding comes from both other sources. But I think, you know, in all our projects, knowing the one thing that we can give is time. That if we actually gave a construction completion of end of next year and give any potential contractor the maximum amount of time to do the project, that's how you will achieve your best pricing. So that's just the other consideration I wanted to put forward. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Councilor McGill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding part 3, the installation of street lighting, it talks about the upgrading of 28 poles. I guess the question I have would that upgrade see sort of like a better area lit by each individual pole? Because, you know, going back into past history, when we saw the upgrade of certain poles in residential neighborhoods, it actually came with a number of complaints saying that the periphery of each pole sort of saw a decrease in actual area that got lit up because they were high efficiency bulbs and that sort of thing. So will we expect to see greater areas lit with the upgrades that are mentioned in part 3?
You would, you know, it's a full lighting design, so you will see it better lit in terms of more consistent lighting through the project. But the biggest thing is it will improve the aesthetics a whole bunch, because instead of having you know, lights attached to power poles, this would actually be lighting and the power runs would move to being underground. And you would just get that more feeling of a, you know, a city street as opposed to a rural cross-sectioned highway with power poles and lights added to them.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
With respect to the power pole project, that's the first I've heard of it. This to me was a picks up the road and asphalt reconstruction. It wasn't a power pole project, so I see that as a separate project that should come to a future budget year, and then we can match that with all the other priorities that we have. I thought the priority was getting the asphalt across the road done. Unless, so that's my preference on that. To me, you're kind of combining two projects into one of which we never really talked about during the capital planning stage. So I'm not in favor of going ahead with that.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the chair to committee, that's exactly why this is in front of you, is to tell you what we've included in this project. The reason we looked at doing the lighting is because it was inside our paving limits and it's the appropriate time to do it. If you don't do it now, you won't see it at the next budget meeting, because then we would have to start looking at the entire town and where do you do and where don't you do, and so we looked at it as part of the project, and it makes sense to either do it with the project or don't do it. And so that's why we included it there with this project. This project does include upgrading the traffic controlling system, and that needs to be done because we had to replace the other one, and this is outdated technology in that, so we know we need to do that. So this was highlighted for you specifically because it's not a must do. It's a what does council think of doing it while you're there?
Okay, in my opinion, thanks.
So my question is, and I think you've answered it, is it a need? Do we need to change the lighting? Is the lighting that we have, I know it's pretty dim, but is it effective? Does it meet our needs?
Through the chair to all of the committee, we haven't received any complaints. It's just something we identified as part of going through the project and looking at the upgrades. As you're scoping a project, you want to do what needs doing, and that's exactly why I'm bringing this to you today for your input.
Thank you very much. And Councilman Louise. Yeah, I have to. Were you next?
I don't know if I was next,
Yes,
but I was
you were.
certainly.
Yes, you were. Yes.
Thank you. Just speaking for myself, I'm certainly supportive of that section 3. Just because I think it creates additional safety, especially for those families who transit between the rec center, skate park, and the more medium density residential areas, but also for the businesses along Swanson Road who are off a major street. Again, I think it's just an important safety consideration. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we have Mayor Nissen, Councillor Chambers, and Councillor Stasek. Mr. Mayor. Oh, and I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to administration. I'm generally in support of this project, but given the developments with the mill lands and the situation at the mill, I understand that both mills are doing some reconfiguration of their lands, that there's the possibility of traffic changes as a result of their changing operations, and that specifically the Hinton Wood Products side of the mill has quite a bit of utility work to do to separate their systems from their legacy. Is there any risk to this project, say 2 years, 3 years down the road with all of the reconfigurations at the mill, that we're going to be digging this up again in 2 or 3 years time to make way for traffic flow changes from the mills, or potentially utility upgrading or again, restructuring based on the subdivision of the mill lines? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. To administration.
Through the chair to committee. That's sort of why I flagged that for you, is that, you know, there's obviously a large number of unknowns. I think that it's less likely that we have to dig up anything that we construct. You know, the paved infrastructure that's there certainly needs to get redone. You know, internally, we had some discussions on, you know, whether we think the jug handle will always be needed, and we don't see another way of getting logs that come from Rob Road into there, like hauling them a further distance around to somewhere else just doesn't really make a lot of sense to us. So we think everything we do here will be necessary. But that ain't to say that, you know, other changes don't mean we have to do something else somewhere else, or we spend some money here that maybe we upgrade something beyond what it's needed. You know, that could happen, but I don't see us tearing anything out that we build.
Madam Chair, may I follow up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And through the chair back to Mr. McLaughlin. So just to confirm them, and I understand the traffic flow changes are pretty hard to predict, and I understand that we may need to do further things to accommodate that later. I guess I really want to dig in quickly on the utility services for those mills. I don't know where they come from or where they go, if they go under or around this section of road. But is there any risk to those utility upgrading to this particular section of road, or are the utilities elsewhere? Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the chair of the rest of the committee, I'd have to look to be sure, from, you know, looking at the designs and this kind of stuff. I don't think any of the mill's major power lines go through this site that I haven't identified. But I also haven't, you know, studied it with that question in mind either. So that would have to be something.
CEO.
Thank you, Chair. The one thing to keep in mind is that as of right now, the water and I believe sewer is coming from the what would now be the Mondi property into the sawmill property. So we have an agreement with West Fraser that once that line is no longer usable, or they have to upgrade it, or at some point in time, they will have to upgrade their servicing to a more traditional servicing arrangement, and that will come off, not quite the jug handle, but Kelly, yeah, but off of Kelly Road is where the water is. I believe the sewer is immediately adjacent to that. So at some point in time, the sawmill will connect to that location. We just don't know exactly when, but I don't believe that it would affect this project.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, does that satisfy you?
Yes, actually, the CAO pretty much provided the answer I was looking for. Was those utilities are off of this particular section of road. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Haas, thank you for your patience, sir.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just a question, because one other road, so the lighting is just from Kelly Road to Swanson is what you're suggesting. There's no suggestion of possibly expanding it to somewhat down Kelly Road as well, because I'm just wondering, because that area is fairly dark. It's an area that also, it would be nice to have a sidewalk potentially, because that area, even though there's not a lot of pedestrian traffic, the SPCA spend a lot of time walking dogs and everything in that area. Summertime it's not so bad because they use the ditches. Wintertime, not so good. They're actually walking in the road, and they have no lighting and they have no sidewalk to go on. So that's never been a consideration, or is that something that maybe with what Mayor Nissen brought up, the fact that, and to the CEO, there may be some work there being done later with Mondi and piping in or connecting to that water line, would that be ever considered potentially on that particular stretch?
Through the committee to, or through the chair to committee. Yeah, no, we looked sort of within our already designated area that we were going to repave. I mean, you know, when we're doing it as a town, we can package our projects any way we want. But certainly what I'm used to is that you know, you establish the area that you're going to address, and then you study it and look for what needs to be done and what makes sense to do while you're there. And so for this, you know, the driving force was the pavement condition, and then we studied all the area within it to come up with the work that we're suggesting.
If I may follow up, and understandable, I think that would be by the sounds of it, a separate project if we were to consider it, but I just thought if we're in there with lightings, you know, is there an opportunity to expand it a bit, but I get that there is that, but maybe that's a future discussion, thank you.
I'd like
Thank
to
you,
add-
sir.
I'd like to add some.
Go ahead.
Through the chair of the committee, I would like to add that portion of the project would actually be dealt with as a separate contract, in that we'd actually have to hire Fortis to do that lighting work. Now, again, you want to coordinate that with your other contractors and make that all work nicely together, but so the other contractor still needs to be there on site and they work together, but the actual installation of the electrical and the lights comes from Fortis. So we could look at expanding that scope if that is what was desired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have Chalmers, Ostashik, and Laguna. Councillor Chalmers.
Thank you through the chair. So I agree with doing the lighting upgrade at the same time. I'm not a fan of mobilizing multiple times to the same area of town. I think it frustrates people. You know, when you're looking at these projects, and generally speaking, I do believe that if we were doing this as a standalone project, that street lighting cost would be substantially higher than doing it at the same time when we already have crews and flagging people and shutdowns and all of those other things. I think I am in support of that. I know most of us have talked, I was gonna bring up actually the dog walking as well. I think there's a ton of traffic that comes from, even if Kelly Road's a separate thing, I think them still having that good lighting crossing from Kelly onto Switzer and down that's definitely the path that they're taking, whether they're going east or west. So I certainly support that. And definitely as well support the sewer line, looking at the ground penetrating radar. I think that is a massive risk in a very critical knuckle of our community that I think we would be remiss to underestimate the impact that could have on our local businesses, especially as we get into the later times of fall and busy logging season, et cetera. We don't want to be shut down unnecessarily. So certainly like to see something like that where we try to, you can never remove all your risk, but mitigate it as much as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Councillor Laguna.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to get clarification, then make an action. So just to clarify, and really, I think this is more so for any members of the public who may be watching. When we look at page 3 of 4 in the report, the specific report item, and we look at source of funding. So again, just clarification, the budgeted expenses for this are, 1.85 million coming from the former MSI grant, 0.9 million coming from the STIP and the LMIs. And then lastly, the $250,000 for the cost sharing agreement. That makes up the total of the 3 million for the project. Really, that's the summary of the funds of this, is essentially cost sharing and grants. Yes. Perfect. So in this case, Madam Chair, I'm very comfortable making the recommended action that administration or that council seek consensus to proceed with the tendering of the Switzer paving project upon positive receipt of the Strategic Transport Initiative Program funding and confirmation of West Fraser's contribution to the project. And then if I just briefly may speak to that. One of council's most basic jobs is to do the unexciting, job of providing roads and power and sewer and all that kind of thing. In this case, we're just, again, proceeding forward with an important capital project In this case, providing asphalt rehabilitation over the long term, as well as some low hanging fruit, that comes along with that project. And it all aligns with grant funding and cost sharing. So I'm extremely comfortable just to do what we need to do and provide high level infrastructure for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So council, we do have a direction on the floor. I hope everybody has an opportunity to read it. And Councilor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be in support of the direction. I do want to just make a comment if possible, because I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into things, but in regards to the walking, if with that median walking up down Kelly, across Switzer, over to I see a lot of people crossing there, but if possible, is it possible to put a sidewalk, a walking path in that median at least, so that they have some place to walk up to the set of lights? And because it's kind of a no walk zone, but there is a light you can push to cross, and it seems very awkward. And I'm, again, it's not the summer that's the issue, but for me, it's the winter time, because you're forced to walk on the street to push that button and then cross Switzer to get onto the walking path. So I don't want to throw anything in there, but if there's an opportunity to at least add that, it would make it, I think, a lot safer for people that do walk that area. And that's just a thought on it, but I fully support, we need to redo that road in that area, and I think the lighting is good. It's just maybe there's that possibility. So, and I don't know if that needs to be a motion to council, or just something for administration to consider.
Through the chair to all the committee, I can take that as a general comment, and we'll take that back and look at that.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Councilor Magoo.
No.
Okay, Councilor Taylor.
So if I vote for number one, would we be going ahead without considering the sewer pipe and its condition under the ground? Because I wouldn't be in favor of going ahead to do that. I'd go for option two if we were going to do that. And I'm also in favor of going ahead and knowing what's going on with the grant opportunities. I'm also in favor of understanding a little better what's happening with Mondi. And option two supports that. So what's the risk to those three things if we proceed with option one? Those are my concerns with proceeding with option one.
Administration.
Through the chair to all of the committee, I think I would prefer if you actually added to the motion to do the ground penetrating radar. And then I think the rest of it is, the check-in was, as we were proceeding. So, I think I would have clarity if you added the ground penetrating radar. That's the consensus I'm hearing from the group, is that you think that's a good idea, that we should do that. On the Resource Road grant funding, it's in the motion that will proceed once we have those, but in a positive way. And the overhead lighting, I'm taking that as in based on the discussion. And the Mondi, we'll certainly have more discussions with them. And if we hear any major pushback, we would bring that back to council. So the only one I'm hearing is different from what we're putting forward is doing the ground penetrating radar.
So can I put an amendment to add the ground penetrating amendment as an addition to the existing motion? So that we won't proceed until the ground penetrating stuff is done? That's what
So
I
that's
think.
your amendment to this direction.
My amendment is that we don't proceed with construction until the we don't proceed with construction, I guess, until ground penetrating work is done. Sewer assessments are complete.
Through the chair to the committee, I would just add at the end, the administration, complete ground penetrating radar as part of the design.
Okay, and that administration complete ground penetrating radar as part of the design. That's the amendment that.
Yeah.
So we will be voting on this amendment. Beginning on.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair. It should, I believe, Councilor Taylor's motion was that administration complete ground penetrating radar. As part, sorry. Assessment as part of the design.
Yes.
Council, we do have an amendment to the direction. Any discussion on this? Go ahead, sir.
I believe I know the answer, but clarification is always good. Can admin confirm that proceeding with the assessment of the radar doesn't jeopardize the other grant funding that's already in place?
Through the chair to committee, no, it wouldn't have any effect.
Yeah, I'm supporting that, Chair.
So I'll call to question, the amendment. And that administration complete the ground penetrating radar assessment of the sewer line as part of the design. Council, please vote no. And that is carried. Go ahead, Councilor Taylor.
I don't know whether to do another amendment on Schedule C. It depends on the answer to this question. I'm not sure it would pass, but the assumption's being made that street lighting is going to be, the councilor made the statement, street lighting is going to cost more if we do it later, and it's going to, is that, that information is not provided here, is that? How is the street lighting going to cost more or be more inconvenient if we do it later? Or is it?
Through the chair to all of committee, I would say that there would be some increase in cost by not packaging it with a project, specifically in project management fees alone. If it was a whole separate project, you would be having someone deliver a project separate, whereas right now we're gonna have an engineering firm on site. It's little to no extra to have them supervising the installation of the lighting while they're already there. So there's be some economies of scales, but I would say it's a large increase in price, but I would say it would probably be 10-15% savings by doing it as part of this project.
The other statement that's being made by another councillor is that the street lighting is a safety issue, suggesting it's potentially dangerous. Have there been accidents or safety related issues at this intersection due to the lighting?
Through the chair to all of committee, I wouldn't say what we have there right now is a dangerous situation. What I would say is that this new lighting would be a properly designed lighting system and we would increase safety. That does not say that we have an unsafe condition now.
Okay, thanks.
CEO.
Through the chair, and just for clarity, and as of right now, we do have street lights along Switzer. There is a quite a gap from the jug handle into where the street lights start, but as a part of replacing all of those, they are it's all overhead, power lines, it's, you know, and it's just really an older design when it looks like a power pole with the actual light itself bolted onto it, so. But there is a little bit of a gap that we would have to take a look at, but there are street lights along Switzer currently, right? So I don't know if it would be a major increase in the lighting or safety other than that a particular gap between the jug handle and where they start on Switzer, but it'll certainly improve the aesthetics with the buried underground lines and proper mounting poles.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Keller, you're good.
Well, my concern is a nice to do versus a high priority must do. So in light of all the information you've given us regarding sewer and water and old infrastructure and all that coming on, and the having to increase the amount of money we put towards sewer and water reserves by 250%. If we're doing a nice to do, and in a year or two, we're going to have another plugged up sewer where we could have used the 350,000 instead of having a nice to do something that would provide, safe drinking water or sewer to somebody. It's a matter of priorities, so that's what I see. So. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And Councilor McGowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just out of curiosity, if it was the will of council to delay street lighting as an example, is there a guarantee down the road that that money can be taken from the same grants? Or is there the possibility that it has to come from reserve funding?
Through the chair to committee, the LGFF grant, it would continue to be available for lighting. So that grant would be available. The resource road grant, that is specific to this wouldn't be there. Now how that actually factors in, I haven't studied which grants paying through for which piece, but the LGFF one wouldn't disappear. The STIP grant is specifically eligible because of our resource partners on this road.
I'm good, Madam Chair.
And generally is only very big projects. You'd never get a small little lighting project under the STIP project.
So, Mr. McLaughlin, you said just minutes ago, the lighting is 375,000. If we don't do it now, we could see an additional 10 to 50% increase in pricing if we do it later. Is that correct?
Through the chair to committee, yes, I said that we would see some savings by having it part of a bigger project, in that the project management's already there and looking after the project. So there would be a cost reduction. The other thing I did stipulate is that if we don't do it as part of this project when we're working in the area, we likely won't prioritize these lights and bring it to you in the next budget cycle. We just simply wouldn't do it.
But did I hear you correctly saying it would cost 10 to 50% more if we did it like a standalone?
Because of the cost of tendering it separately and supervising it separately and those kind of costs.
It could be up to $50,000. Okay, thank you very much. Council, we do have a direction on the floor. Any more discussion? And seeing nothing from anyone. Jen, if you could open that up. I will call a question. Administration recommends that committee seek consensus to proceed with tendering of the Switzer paving project upon positive receipt of Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, the STIP, funding and confirmation of West Fraser's contribution to the project, and that administration complete the ground penetration regardless of sewer line as part of the design. Councilor Stasher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before you call the question, the wording needs to be fixed. It should be, instead of the administration recommends, it should be committee seek consensus, and it should be consensus. In the motion, it says census.
So we can take note administration recommends just. That first line.
That would be my opinion. It's not my motion. No.
Thank you. Good catch. Would I need to read this all over again? I will. Call the question that committee seek consensus to proceed with tendering of the Switzer paving project upon positive receipt of the Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program funding. STIP. And confirmation of West Fraser's contribution to the project, and that administration complete the ground penetrating radar assessment of sewer lines as part of the design. Council, please vote no. And that is carried. Council, any other discussion on this report? Council Taylor.
The cost add up to $2.6 million. Why are we calling this a $3 million project?
Administration.
Through the chair to all of committee. That $3 million is what we budgeted at the time of the budget. We haven't tendered this project yet, so we don't know the true costs. But right now, our estimate is 2.6, and if we complete design, we're still seeing that we have that small, that we have room in the budget. Obviously, you'll only pay what it costs.
So we're moving on to report 5.4 economic development strategy, and that is page 87 on your agenda. Administration.
Thank you, Chair, to the rest of the committee. So I'm bringing this report forward, and there's quite a bit in here. And really what I'm trying to do is get some direction related to 4 different tactics in a tactical plan. The first is to implement priority action items from the 2018 Economic Development Plan. That is included for 2024. And then 1.7, 1, 2, and 3 is update the 2018 Economic Development Plan. Conduct a regular review update on the Economic Development Plan within 24 months, each new council. And 173 is to prepare and adopt a tourism strategic plan. And that's on the technical plan will be completed next year. So I wanted to come forward as a more of an alignment piece with council to see what our appetite or our desire is to look at and to talk about what we want to do with economic development. One of the big concerns that I had when I was looking through everything that we had is that we do not have any dedicated resources into economic development. And, you know, while I'm a big proponent of strategic planning as an effective tool, if we don't have any dedicated resources towards this program, if we don't have any plans to add more resources specific to economic development, then our best course of action, at least from my perspective, may be to look at low-hanging fruit, look at 1.6.1 as the focal point, which is to implement whatever priority action items council may consider. I've outlined all of the different strategies or action items that have been dedicated to administration, whether this be through the strategic or economic development strategic plan or our own council strategic plan. So as you can see, it spans I would say 4 pages of action items. It really isn't possible. There is some overlap when you look at what we're doing from our tactical plan, our strategic plan. A lot of that does incorporate in one way, shape, or form into our economic development strategic plan. So we are doing a lot, even though we may not necessarily call it or have the same terminology across the documents. We are doing a lot in economic development, as you can see through the first page and a half. The economic development plan, economic development strategic plan outlines quite a 43 different action items, some of which we are doing, or we are doing portions of them. But what I could say is that implementing something of this size would require a lot of resources and a lot of time. Expect only if we were to look at the update of the strategic plan and the development of a tourism strategic plan. So it's certain we can certainly do it, but I think it would require some more resources and a little bit more thought and how. My recommended action is related to 1.6.1. That is at this point in time to identify those low-hanging fruits or those priority action items through this economic development strategic plan. Accomplish those. And at that point, we can certainly look at the program again. Or if council does not have council or committee doesn't have a desire to go forward with development or updating the strategic plans in order to implement them, then we could look at removing 1.7.1, 7.2, and 7.3 if that was the wish of council. But my intent is for council to just committee to have an open conversation about what we want to do with these 4 tactical items and what our approach should be.
Thank you very much, Councilor McGowan.
Yeah, I guess to build off of that, my question is in relation to the recommended action. And then CAO, you highlighted 1.6.1. Essentially, would another way of saying that be in a more simplistic approach? Council's recently updated their strategic plan to have a look at the 43 initiatives that sort of are on the books and to align them and sort of get rid of the ones that don't necessarily or are extraneous to the current strategic plan and just focus on the ones that align themselves with the current document. Is that right?
Through the chair to members of council, I think 161. I think we're talking about the same thing, but that's specific to the 2018 Economic Development Strategic Plan and looking through that document and identifying which of those elements do we want to execute. Because if you look through it, some are going to be, there's going to be some blurring of lines of when it comes to what we're doing already. So, but yeah, I would say that's accurate. It's just about instead of going through the process, and the other reason, sorry, that I wanted to bring this up is the implement of those priority action items. We had pushed that back to 2024 in our last update. That was 2023 with the updating of the strategic plan in 2024. So we wanted to kind of look at those two in tandem, because if council does have an appetite to update that economic development strategic plan, we should do that before we go down the road of executing on whatever tactics or items that it's identified. But that's what I would say for 161. Whatever elements of this plan we would like to incorporate either in our strategic plan or through motion, we can execute, bring forward a report for council to consider that. The only other element that I would say is that there's been some other economic development proposals that have come across come to our attention in the last little while, and those are through partnerships with other organizations. So I've identified a few here. That's with the Center for Hospitality Studies and Research with their Main Street Revitalization. Technology Alberta has provided us with a proposal on some programming that they offer. as well as Discover Coding. So those are the other options. The action items do not have to come specifically from this the economic development strategy.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hollis.
And to further clarify, CEO Panasic, so 1.71, 1.72, and 1.73, the recommendation is to basically put those on hold, focus on 1.6.1 is what you're suggesting potentially?
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and for me, for definitely 1.73, because when we had this conversation, we didn't have a DMO. That was still in a conversation, so I think, you know, at the time, we were looking at ourselves being more that towards some strategic plan, but with the adoption of DMO and having a counselor sitting on the board, non-voting, of course, but still having some input there, I definitely see it's not necessary for town business, but I'm guessing that, you know, 1.71 and 1.72, I mean, there will be implemented some sort of update on a regular basis anyway. So yeah, the question is then is having a future conversation as to 1.6.1 and those 43 operational initiatives and figuring, as Councilor Magoon said, sifting out some of those that are really not necessary or we're already doing. So, but okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor.
Well, perhaps for the public, we have put a lot of effort into economic development. We did come up with 32 items, of which 4 are related to the economic development plan. So now we've got 28 specific items that we're going to do in the way of economic development, and we've got like a year and a bit left in our term to do stuff. So yeah, we could go through the old plan and look for 1 or 2 items, but we've already spent a considerable amount of effort identifying stuff in the economic development in the items in our strategic plan that we've already got. There might be 1 or 2. I wouldn't expect much more than that. That's what you're suggesting.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Council, I just want to remind you, we do not have a motion on the floor. Councilor Magoon.
I guess the only question I have for administration, and maybe it's just semantics or clearing up old plans and that sort of thing. What would be the impact of accepting this report for information, given the fact that we have a strategic plan that we've already developed? Because again, when I looked through this and I looked through that list of past items, I was really, like, I saw there's a lot of cross-pollination there. That's captured within our current strategic plan. So I want to make it clear, I don't think we're saying no to economic development. Like, as Councillor Taylor mentioned, we have a lot of economic development built into our current plans. Does anybody, and I guess the question's for council as well, is there any loss in simply accepting that plan for information and focusing on the last year and a half with the current strategic plan? That's a question for anybody.
CEO.
Thank you, Chair. No, certainly not. And during the time that the council strategic plan was created, economic development was one of the pillars of that entire plan. So there is a lot that was incorporated in, and we have a very aggressive economic development plan. You know, we may not call it an economic development department, but make no mistake, that is a major focus of this council as it's communicated through that strategic plan. So I think we've certainly done that. It appears to me that we have, I don't think that this economic development strategy was a waste. It looks like we've taken a number of different elements and incorporated into the strategic plan. But instead of receiving for information, I would like to know from committee what we would like to do with these, because if we're not interested in pulling more out of this economic development strategy and implementing maybe new programs or looking at different initiatives from this plan, then my suggestion would be to remove it from the tactical plan altogether and focus on what we have in front of us over the next 18 months.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think we put a lot of thought into what we're doing right now. When I looked through the 43 items, I couldn't see any one. And going with what we've got doesn't prevent next budget cycle if a genius idea comes out, going ahead with that, sure, for the final year or something. Or somebody has looked through this list of 43 and seen one that really stands out as something that we should have done. You know, speak up. I don't. Accepting it as information or moving ahead with what we got, with the exception of 617, 172, and 73, 173, 172, 171, 161 would be what I would see would be a reasonable way to go ahead. If that's called except for information, then that'd be okay. That's called alternative option 1. I'm not sure which option that one is on this list of 4 options. Maybe that's a question. Which option is that?
Go ahead, sir.
Through the chair, I would say that would be, if we're talking about removing these items from the tactical plan, that would be option 2. Currently, we have it as 1.71, 72, and 73. And if council would like, we can certainly add 1.6.1. If we made that motion, we could make that amendment to the tactical plan, bring it back for council to formally adopt.
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to move we proceed with option 2. And I would add to option 2 that we remove 1.61. Okay. And that still gives us a 22 action item aggressive economic development plan. And it still allows us in the final budget year, if there's another really good idea that comes up that we need to do, to go ahead with that. So committee provide consensus to remove tactical plan goal 1.7. The town is committed to the upgrade and implementation of the town's economic development plan and tourist strategic plan and associated tactics 1.71, 1.72, and 1.73, comma, and to remove 1.61. That still leaves us with a very aggressive strategic plan of 22 action items. And the possibility if something comes at us that's just absolutely genius, that we could do that in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. The motion came before I gave you an opportunity.
No, I'll speak to the motion. But yeah, okay, I'm in favor of this. I just have a quick question as to, because that doesn't preclude that, you know, you were mentioning partnership opportunities for consideration, so that still keeps that door open potentially to partnerships with this motion if they come forward, like, because even though we're moving it from the tactical plan, but that can still happen. Is that the case?
Through the chair's address of council, yeah, absolutely. This would be to amend that tactical plan. That means that administration would focus on these particular items. But if council at any point in time wants to consider, you know, any other item or possibly one of the partnership opportunities that have come through, we can make that motion and proceed with that. And if you believe that it's strategic in nature, we could add it as a specific item to the tactical plan if we decide to do that. But it certainly doesn't prevent us from moving forward with any of these in the future. If that's what we decide to do.
Thank you. If I may follow up.
Certainly.
I think we have more pressing matters with our housing issues in our community. We've heard that from the Chamber of Commerce. We've had a discussion with a local developer this evening. I think, you know, efforts in that area, I think, are better suited right now, and less on, because we already have a strategic plan that includes a lot of this. So I see that work is priority potentially. So yeah, that's why I'm in favor of removing these these items, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Mayor Nixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, and through the chair to Councillor Taylor, you mentioned that after removing the town's economic development and tourism strategic plan and associated tactics, that we'll still have 22 economic development plan items. I'm just curious, what 22 economic development plan items are you talking about here? I'm looking at a list of 43 that we're removing.
Yeah, okay, there's two lists of items. There's a list of items of 32 items, and those are in our current approved strategic plan. And we're gonna remove 4 of them. The 4 up there, that makes it 28. I didn't mention 22, I mentioned 28. And then the second is a list of 43, and the number of 43 is in the 2018 economic development plan. So that's the 6-year-old economic development plan that the town manager was talking about. So that's where the list of 43 comes from. The list of 28, which will now become, or 32, which will now become 28, are the ones that we have all approved and discussed in our strategic plan. So there's 2 lists, and those are the 2 separate lists that we're talking about here.
Okay, so just so I am completely clear here, you're talking about 28 items from the strategic plan. There's no 22 item economic development plan that I'm unaware of here. You
No,
did clearly say a 22 item economic development plan.
If I said 22, it's my old age, and I meant 28. I meant.
Okay, and you're specifically talking about the strategic plan.
Yeah, we
For those
got
28 items. Okay,
we got.
thank you. It's difficult over here.
Sorry, I might have said the wrong number. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Mayor. So council, we do have a direction on the floor. Is there any more discussion? I'm not seeing any. I will call the question. The committee provide consensus to remove topical plan goal 1.7. The town is committed to the update and implementation of the town's economic development and tourism strategic plan and associated tactics 1.7.1, 1.7.2, and 1.7.3, and 2 remove 1.6.1. Council, please vote no. And Mayor, listen, I'm not seeing your vote.
Madam Chair, I'll vote in favor verbally here. It's not coming up for me for some reason.
And I have you now. Thank you very much. And that's carried. Council, is there anything else on this before we move on? And hearing nothing, we're going to move on to report 5.5. 2024 operating budget, and that's on page 95 on the agenda. To admit.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn this over to the vote.
Thank you, through the chair to all of the committee. To remain compliant with the legislation, administration must have approved annual budgets in place in order to support any expenditures that we do throughout the year. The adjustments contained on the report attached before committee this evening include changes to the requisition amounts. So during budget preparation, we were using estimates. We have now since received official documentation from the respective entities. So those are the totals for. Other changes include a $96,000 grant that was secured by our FCS service branch for a supporting rural grant. In conjunction with those monies in, there will be expenditures out, which have been noted on the budget adjustments as well. Additionally, there was the $200,000 ACP grant, which was secured as a partnership through or intermunicipal collaboration with Yellowhead County for some water strategies in the future. So again, with that income, there will be corresponding expenses. There was other direction received since the budget was passed in December 7th. Both of those items went through council, and one was to retain the golf professional, and the other was for the viability study for the recreation center. So those are the only adjustments that administration are bringing forward this evening for the 2024 operating budget. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. What were you saying about the assessment for the rec center? Can you say that again?
Council had previously authorized the expenditure from reserves for the viability study for the rec center. So because those have gone through council, we have those permissions to expend those funds, but we're just taking this opportunity to group everything in one document.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McEwen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And because the source of that funding is $296,000 from grants and $222,500 from reserves, there's no anticipated impact to taxation necessary to make up for that change.
Through the chair, in response to Councilor McEwen, no, this is all neutral to the tax.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Councilor McEwen.
I take the recommended action. That committee requests administration to bring identified operating budget adjustments totaling $518,500 to the April 16th, 2024 regular meeting of council. And I will just leave it at that, Madam Chair.
Council, we do have a direction on the floor. Discussion. And seeing none, so that Jen puts it up there. I'll call the question. The committee requests administration to bring identified operating budget adjustments totaling $518,500 to the April 16th, 2024 regular meeting of council. Council, please vote now. And that is carried. Council, any more discussion on this report before we move on? And seeing nothing, we will move on to 5.6, assessment and taxation rate discussion, and that's on page 98 of your agenda. Administration.
Thank you, Chair. This will go to Ms. Borbozo.
Thank you, through the committee. So the report before you is peppered with a variety of rates, percentages, and values that are both independent and related to each other. So firstly, the town requires $13,934,074 to be raised through taxation to support operations. Secondly, most properties in Hinton have shown increases in their assessed values comparing 2024 to the prior year. The increase in assessment is an important point to consider, as during budget presentations, there were conversations surrounding a 3.3% increase to a 3.9% increase. And all of these numbers were being discussed using historical assessment values. So I'm bringing this forward to you now with all of the rates together in one report so we can have that discussion. If we simply take direction from council to increase or decrease taxes by a certain percentage without taking what has happened with the assessment values into effect, we could end up over collecting or under collecting on the required tax levy. So utilizing the 2024 assessment values, administration prepared 4 scenarios that were intended to help guide the conversation. I hope they didn't confuse everyone more, because the intention was to guide. So a 0% increase to the 2023 tax rates, utilizing the assessed values for 2024, would raise enough money to fund the budget plus an additional $140,000 into reserves. A 1% decrease to the 2023 tax rate will generate enough funds to cover all but $22 of the operating budget. A 3.1% decrease to the 2023 tax rate fund, or to the 2023 tax rate, will fund the operating budget, providing we reduce contributions to reserves. Again, it was just laid out as an option to show you how the funds are flowing, not meant to guide anyone in one direction. And a 4% increase, just the rounding between some of the numbers talked about during budgets, funds the budget plus increases contributions to reserves by $700,000. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you very much. Council, questions for administration? Councilor Sasha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, want to make a motion.
Go ahead, sir.
Move to move the committee request administration develop the 2024 tax rate bylaw showing a decrease in 2024 rates of taxation by 1% from the posted 2023 rates, and bring draft document to the April 23, 2024 meeting of all meeting. If I can speak to it.
Certainly.
I think that option's the most responsible option that's available to council. It represents fully funding the budget that was discussed and passed without adding to it because as a result of assessments and without taking anything away from it. We're still responsibly contributing to reserves. That what I think is a responsible level, and it's at a level that council discussed and approved throughout the budget considerations. I think in consideration of inflation and the difficult time that people are still having, it's a hangover effect from the after effects of COVID and all the related economic things that have happened since then. I think this is represents a responsible balance between collecting and saving for the future and adhering to the budget that we passed a few months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Taylor.
Yeah, I concur. Option one is actually closest to what we discussed in December 7th when we were talking about the budget. It's close, but it's not quite exactly the same. Option one means that the amount we collect in net revenue, net municipal taxes is 2.8, which is even lower than the 3.3% that we were talking in December. So we're collecting about $70,000 less. And this option with the 1% that Albert's talking about, which I support, also means we're putting 3.194 into reserves, which is actually $436,000 more than what we discussed when we were when we were talking in December. So it has a 0.5% lower tax rate, 2.8, and we're putting $436,000 more into reserves, as I understand it. Can you confirm that?
Ms. Marvel.
Through the chair, in speaking to that, and that would have come up later on when we look at the capital, you would note on the page 104 of the report. So there are two line items in the reserve schedule that was provided. Third one down, it was budgeted for, but it is $305,000 that we're allocating towards paying for the RCMP retroactive pay fund. So that was included in the budget as one of the line items when we were presenting the budget. And the other $155,000 is carry forward money. So projects that are in progress at the end of December, we take those funds and put them into a reserve line, and then we fund and complete the projects in the following year. But because taxation supported those projects in 2023, we don't want to re-tax again for in 2024. So there is why there is a couple changes to the reserve amount, is simply balancing those out and making sure that we have the funds in place to pay the RCMP retroactive invoice when it comes due Q1 of 2025.
Thank you very much.
Oh, hold on.
Councilor Taylor?
So this document that we got back, that says we were putting 2.7 into reserves, is that, that's what I thought, that's what I was basing my information on,
So the
and this is back,
back, so there would have been.
October, November, when we were talking about it in detail, we were talking 2.7, not 3.1.
Okay, I will have to go in and look at that, and I certainly can, and isolate where those differences are, but in going through and balancing the budget, any pluses or minuses are always filtered through reserves, rather than put into another line item in the budget. But I know the, RCMP invoice created some additional funding, and we took some, there was an adjustment with the library reserve, which may have caused that number to
That's where the
be
additional
slightly
money came
different.
from. Okay, that's fine. The reason why I mentioned this is that my take on this, is that we were putting $400,000 more into what we talked about in detail. We all talked about the budget. And therefore, I was gonna probably follow this up with a motion that since we've got more money going into reserves than what we talked about and approved back in December 7th. That, and since we have a major impact to the citizens with related to the water treatment and utility bill, that this extra money be put into a dedicated reserve for a new water treatment plant. And it still goes into reserves, it's just that it's dedicated to reduce the pressure on our citizens for the utility rate increases. But I'll do that after this motion passes.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Councilor Chambers?
Thank you, with the chair. I don't think I can support this motion. Everything that I've heard since becoming on council talks about the backlog of work and things that we have to continue to do in our community, reserves that need to be built. I understand there's a massive crunch on everybody everywhere. We look at our neighboring municipalities and some of the tax rates that they have. I understand that this is closest to what we hypothesized, I guess, coming out of our budget, and it's hitting those targets, and I understand that. But I still think going out, saying that we can do a 0% tax increase and still put a little bit more money into reserves. I don't know, doing a 1% tax decrease, looking at what we have overall to continue to spend and do within the community. I just don't know if that's the responsible thing to do.
Thank you very much. Councilor McGowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly will be supporting the direction on the table. I think back in December as a council, we set down a budget. And I'd like to sort of emphasize that one of my learnings over the years as a councillor has been, if we focus too much on the percentage of budget, although we do, we start to lose sight of, or pardon me, on the percentile of taxes increase or decrease. We start to lose sight of the budget, how much we're spending, how much we're allotting to various departments, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's really where the good work is done. One of our past colleagues, he really liked to emphasize too, it's not so much about collecting what we need, it's also about how much we're spending. So this is all part and parcel to this. One of the biggest hiccups for a council in the past several years that I experienced was when we went through the budgeting process. And then on the tail end of that, we found that the assessed values of properties varied quite majorly differently from what we were expecting. And that left us with really a problematic over collection of taxation. And we sort of had to decide, what are we going to do with this? And people were left with a very bad taste in their mouth because they didn't feel that process was really transparent. And we were left sort of cleaning up the mess that created. This, I feel, if we change the percentage, because now we know what the impact of assessment is on our ultimate tax collection, I almost feel like that would be a backdoor to that same process for me, We decided on what the budget was in December, decided how much it was gonna cost to run the town this next year. I think we have to assess for that. If we change that, I don't feel like that's transparent. If we wanted to go back and reevaluate the budget because we felt like there was a problem, great, I'm all for that. But I think this is going to collect the correct amount of taxation for folks. And ultimately, finally, for the impact. People have already paid for this upfront with the assessment and their property values changing. They're already paying more. Independent of what we do with the tax rate. So it's one thing for us to say, oh, well, we're gonna, we'll increase or we'll decrease the tax percentage. Well, the value of my property's gone up, I'm paying more anyway. So at the end of the day, when I get that tax bill, again, it's more out of my pocket. And I would agree, this has been a very difficult time for folks. I think we need to be sensitive to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Nissan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to committee. I also can't support a reduction of the tax rate at this time. Since becoming mayor, all I've read about is how we have consistently underinvested in our community. We have a massive asset management deficit. We have major expenses for utilities upcoming. We've just voted to include peeled logs in our sign situation. That's going to require us to come up with maintenance dollars. We've been deferring regular maintenance on our facilities. We haven't done groundskeeping at the recreation center in years. I hear about this from our community. Our community is starting to fall apart because we're not investing in long-term maintenance. By reducing our tax rate, we're really, every percentage we take off now, we're going to have to add on come December in budget time. We know our costs are going up. We've already voted to add things to the 2025 budget that we cut out of the 2024 budget. So no, I can't support a decrease in the rates. 0% with a little bit of additional going to reserves. I think for a community like ours, where we have large scale deficits on, like I said, asset management's in the hole over $7 million. We need to consider our future here, and we need to plan for our future success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor.
I'm kind of actually surprised to even see it put forth to us this way, because we did a detailed budget discussion. We came up with a plan using a lot of information and multiple days of discussion. And now it's almost like we're reliving that discussion right now for us to have 4 options here. And regarding our significant budget pressures, if that's what we're talking about, we do have plans to deal with those. We've got the water treatment plan. We're going to deal with that through the utility rates. So we're going to have that discussion coming up. I hope we're not trying to do that with this. We've got the asset management plan, and how we're going to fund the asset management plan. And that's going to be in part based on some of those CTV camera assessments that we're going to get. And then that's going to start coming back to us, and then we'll be able to make informed decisions. So we've already gone through and made an informed set of decisions. And for our major budget pressures coming up, we've got informed decision points coming into the future. So for us to do this in between those two things is kind of like ad hoc-y. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Sasha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to agree with many of the comments that Councillor Taylor's made. I think if there was an appetite to take a look at contributing additional to reserves, or if there was items that were important that should have probably got passed, that work should have been done during budget. I don't think that the tax rate bylaw, passing of the tax rate bylaw is the time to do that work. Time to do that work is during budget. We worked long and hard, and so did administration, on coming up with a responsible, balanced budget for 2024. And I think taking advantage of increased assessments to be able to bolster the amount that we're collecting in excess, to be able to contribute additional to the reserves, is a backdoor way to do it. And I don't support doing it that way. I think trying to get the actual money, the actual revenue that we're collecting through taxation to match budget as closely as we possibly can is the most responsible way to do it. And that's why I put this option forward. The difference between what we budgeted and what's what we're gonna be collecting through taxation is $22 difference. I think that's extremely responsible and definitely should be the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Nissan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair to committee. I take contention with the fact that some councillors would state that there's a plan for asset management. There is no plan to fund asset management. It's the same thing with a recreation center. We have no plan to fund a recreation center. What we're talking about here is decreasing a tax rate. And so that in 6 months, when we're starting to talk about budget and councillors are looking at that line number going, hey, we're looking at a 3, 4, 13% increase. Every percent we take off our tax rate today is a percent increase. We're talking about it come October. We did not have, I don't know that it's a responsible discussion today to start reducing our rates so that 6 months from now, we're just increasing our rates by a greater number, or we're cutting our budget further to the bone, or dropping off more of those operational items. I see this as setting us up for success in October. Right now, by cutting the rates, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure and another hard discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor McGowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, again, I think what we have to realize too is that the percentile does not reflect how much money it takes to run the town according to the budget that we transparently passed in December. If we get too hooked on the percentiles, 1% up, 2% down, we're losing focus of the fact that by will of council, we passed a budget in December and we said this is responsible. And I'll be the first one to say I went out to the public. Was very surprised by how that budget process worked out. It was very widely supported. The public was quite happy with that process this year. Everything went quite well. The conversation with my neighbors and our constituents that I'm not comfortable with is if coming out of this meeting and then regular council, they say to me, well, Ryan, I shared with you I was upset that the assessment on my property value went up this year. And of course, as a councillor, I shared with them, the town doesn't control that. That's a private third-party process where somebody says, this is how much your property is worth. But then down the road to say, well, we understood that the impact to our budget was if we kept the percentile the same, we'd actually collect more in taxes than we anticipated. To me, just personally speaking, that feels dishonest. I can't have that conversation with my friends and neighbors because it feels like I haven't been transparent with them. I feel like I'm finding a different way to take more money at the end of the process. I'm not comfortable with that. If it's the will of council, that's fine. That's just why I won't support it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one thing I'd just like to say is, yes, we passed wholeheartedly a budget, but we made a lot of cuts. A lot of cuts and a lot of substantial cuts, and we did kick a lot of things down the road. And by doing a 0% increase, I know we can't get tangled up in the percentages, I get that. But you know, it's $140,000, it's not millions of dollars that's coming out. I think it's still responsible. We can, I mean, I wouldn't obviously have a problem saying, hey, you know what, because of this, yes, you are paying more, your assessments are more. We're doing a 0% tax increase, which would enable us to put $140,000 into whatever reserve that looks like. I still think that is accountable and responsible. It's not a incredible amount of money. But decreasing tax rates at a critical time in our community, I can't support it.
Thank you very much. Council? I have to say I'm torn on this one. I truly am. Marx is gonna pay our way in town taxes, get things done. And this is a tough one. So council, any more discussion on this? Go ahead, Councilor Taylor.
The number that the citizens I talk to care about is how much extra they pay per year in taxes on average. And that's how much that's reflected in how much the net municipal taxes go up. So assessments go up, approved tax rate goes down, approved assessments go down, tax rate goes up. The number that matters at the end of the day is how much did I pay for taxes, net municipal taxes last year? How much do I pay for net municipal taxes this year? That number is not zero. that number is around 3%. That number hasn't changed from our detailed budget discussion. So that's really the number that matters to the people that I talk to, how much extra at the end of the year they have to pay.
Councillor Stassi.
I have to concur, when we were going through the budget process and talking to people and discussing that we were looking probably to pass around a 3%, 3% tax increase. People were okay with that. One of the information I got, okay, I'm cool, my tax bill goes up approximately 3%, that's fine, no problem. Now, through no fault of theirs, we're now considering maybe looking at an option where even if we do a zero, their tax bill's going up 4.13%, which is the amount that the average residential assessment went up between 23 and 24. I don't think that's fair. When we passed the budget, people said, fine with 3. They never got to weigh in on 4.13. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Council? CAO.
Thank you, Chair. I think some very good points were made on the approach, and and I do agree. But as a CAO, I will have to just remind council that we did a lot of hard work. We did make a lot of cuts, and we did come to what I would consider a responsible budget. We also did that with the knowledge that we are choosing to underfund our assets by approximately 3 million a year, knowing that our average reserves are about half of what the average urban municipality would be at. So, we passed that budget. I think it was a responsible budget. I think we found a good balance. I'm not saying now's the time to address that, but I just think that it's important to remind council that, while we have a choice now on the timing and how we approach things. But make no mistake, that money will have to come from somewhere at some point in time, and we are underfunding our assets currently. Whether now is the right time or not, that's not really for me to say, but it is an important element to consider.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor.
If you also remember, when we had the utility rate bylaw discussion, the option that this council favored unanimously was the one that went to $240 roughly per month. And that amount increased the utility rate by this much. And the idea was that in a short period of time, with the increases, there'd be a little bit left over to start paying for asset management. So that was part of the plan, if I remember those discussions correctly. So we have talked about it. We do have a plan to do this, and we all unanimously agreed to that plan. And yeah, there's more to be done in the future, but that's why we're doing that CTV camera stuff to narrow it down to the real priorities on what we have to do. So we really know. Thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Nissan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to administration. I don't recall there being sufficient value in our utility rates to cover off the asset management deficit. Can you confirm what Councillor Taylor just stated as being fact?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Through the chair of the committee, what Mr. Taylor is referring to is at strategic planning, when we looked at the different options, we have a water treatment plant to pay for, and we also have sewer upgrades to pay for. And what was suggested was that we take the sewer fees that were going to be necessary to put it over the 4 years that we need to do the sewer upgrades. And then at that time, we leave the sewer rates where they are and start using that money towards our deficiency in the asset management. So that's what he was referring to is the choice to cover the sewer repairs in an aggressive manner. And then when that's paid for, using the extra on that side.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. And can you confirm one way or the other, was that funding going to be sufficient to make up our difference, or was it not even close, or where did that stand?
through the committee, I can't remember the exact number off the head, but it wasn't gonna cover it all, but it was gonna be a significant contribution towards investing in the water and sewer lines that we needed. So it wasn't gonna fully get to what our asset management plan was suggesting, but it was gonna be a fair step towards it anyway. I don't remember the exact number.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So CAO, do you know when the conversation about the utility tax rate is coming to us?
Through the chair of the committee, we haven't set an exact date yet. We are meeting every week and working towards it. If I was going to guess, I would say it would be the last Cal meeting in May.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Council, any more discussion on this before I call the question? And hearing and seeing none. I will call to question. The committee requests administration develop the 2024 tax rate bylaw showing a decrease to the 2024 rates of taxation by 1% from posted 2023 rates and bring draft document to the April 23rd, 2024 committee of the whole meeting. Please vote no.
No.
Councillor Taylor. Oh, you're voting in favor? Okay, so I have you here. So that is carried and with 3 against. Mayor Nissen, Councillor Race and Councillor Chambers. Any more discussion before we carry on? Councillor Taylor.
I would like to move that the additional $430,000 that we're putting into reserves be put into a reserve dedicated for the new water treatment plant. So we were talking 2.7 going into reserves. Now we're talking 3.1 and change going into reserves. That's an addition of over $430,000. Still going into reserves. I'd like it dedicated towards a water treatment plant. And the reason for that is to take the pressure off the increases in the utility bills that are going to come for the water utility bills. Those are going to be I don't know what the word is, difficult for a lot of people to have to pay if we don't start putting money towards that. Thanks.
So my question to you, Councillor Taylor, is by putting that money into that reserve, how will that help our citizens should we have a utility rate increase?
A significant portion of the $240 that we're going to be put to collecting, or if that's the amount that we agreed to collect, as opposed to that's 280, that's 240 a month versus the 150 or versus the 75 a month. Significant portion of that is going to pay for the water treatment plant in year 15, the $52 million that we have to save up. So if we start that off with $400,000, that'll help reduce maybe a small part of that utility bill increase, because it'll mean we'll have to save a little bit less money.
Thank you.
Smaller amount we have to save.
Thank you, sir. And Councillor Stashik and then Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just would like to look to administration for an explanation of what Councilor Taylor is referring to. I apologize if I'm not getting that, but I'm not seeing where the $430,000 of unallocated money that can be contributed to reserves is. I just don't see where that is.
If I may, through the chair, in order to respond to Councillor Taylor's request, I would need to go back to the document of November and follow through the entries made to reserves. I know that the removal of the library reserve created an anomaly within our statements, and the monies for the our CMP retroactive. I'm pretty certain they were in there at the start, but they may have gone in subsequent to that meeting. So I would like the latitude to look that document up and bring a report forward to committee.
I can follow up.
Yes, sir.
So with that said, then I can't support that today. I might be able to if we get a report from administration, but I won't be able to today. So if that was withdrawn and a different one was made to bring a report to a committee of the whole. Support that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Council, it's just minutes before 8. We still have much to talk about. Need a motion to extend. I'm sorry.
We have a motion already pending with this, so we can.
Right.
So,
Go ahead, sir.
yeah, I'm of the same way. I can't support the motion with just, because I mean, based on what I've seen, there's no changes to reserve allocation with what the previous motion was. So I need that report as well. So I'm hoping the same, that something's withdrawn and then another motion.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Taylor.
I'm going to vote against my motion too, and that way that will kill the motion and we could put another motion forward. I agree with you, Gary, your report on this is probably important. Since administration would like time to look at the numbers.
So in knowing that you can make a motion, have to speak in favor of it, and vote against it, we will carry on. And I will call this question.
A procedural question.
Go ahead.
I guess to administration, that if this is called question and gets defeated, yes, because it's just committee, it can come back. Right?
Through the chair, yeah, that'll be okay. It's whatever the next direction is, what we'll proceed with, but this isn't going to top council's hand. Sure, on what we can or can't do.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So council, any more discussion on this before I call the question? The committee direct administration. The committee direct administration that the additional $430,000 dedicated for reserves be dedicated to the new water treatment plant. Please vote now. And that is defeated. Go ahead, sir.
Motion to extend.
And we do have a motion to extend. By Councilor Hawes. So council, I will call the question, motion to extend the meeting past 8 p.m. Please vote now. And that is carried. Thank you. Councilor Taylor.
I'd like to make a motion that we ask administration to bring back a report on the transfer to reserves that we adopted in December 7th. And how that number is different from the number we're proposing with what we just approved. That clear enough?
Yes.
And just by way of further comment, both those numbers are in the community 2024 budget guide, so it shouldn't be hard to find. They're both right here. So I think it'll be fairly quick process. Thank you. Direct administration, bring back a report on the transfer to reserves that was adopted in December 7th, 2023. And that, I don't, where did I use the numbers that we just approved? The transfer to reserves that we just approved, which is 3.194.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, the number that we've just approved for if we go forward with this budget is a transfer of the number that we adjusted. If we go ahead with this, what we just approved, then that's going to result in a transfer of this much money. So how is that much money different than the what we approved in December? That's what I'm trying to say. Don't know exactly how to say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Direct administration bring back a report, transfer reserve was adopted in December 2023. And the rate that was approved, what's today? I guess the day's date, just April 9th. Yes, thank you.
Okay, council, we're gonna read the motion for the written rules what we're going to be discussing. But the direct administration will bring back the report on the transfer of reserves that was adopted on December 7th, 2023, and the rate that was approved on April 9th, 2024. That was my discussion.
And the reason why that's important is that I believe that's a $430,000 difference. And that we want, and I think we want to give consideration as to what we do with that difference, whether we want to put it to a specific reserve or something. That's what I'd like to consider. But first, we want to verify what that number is.
CEO, do we have to note the meeting or a date that we would like this report to come back to us by?
Through the chair to members of the committee, we certainly can. If council would like it by a specific date, if not, it'll be administrative discretion on what we bring it forward. But, you know, we are talking about a reserve policy that might be, you know, that high level. We've categorized everything we intend to come back to talk about the general strategy and the allocations towards it. It might be sufficient then if this is important to look at prior to passing the budget next Tuesday. We may be able to provide a much smaller report for next Tuesday's regular council.
So Councilor Campbell, would you like to see it next Tuesday at regular?
I believe it's a fairly straightforward number and simple to obtain. It could be easily obtained by Tuesday. Yes, I'd like to see it by Tuesday. You want me to put that words in there?
If you would like to, but if I believe we're clear though, if we would like to do a report by Tuesday, you know, we're of that understanding. If you'd like to include in the motion to ensure that it's in here, that
Sure, I'll
I have
put it
no
on the
objections.
The committee direct administration bring back a report by April 16th. Just add the words by April 16th. Thanks.
I'm glad that you added the addition of a date, because we want all of our motions to be crystal clear, right?
Mhm.
So when somebody reads it, they know exactly what we're talking about, and when we want to see. Councilor Fawcett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was perfectly fine with that until the date got added. I don't know that it's material to the decision that we are gonna be making on Tuesday. It's a simple matter of discussion about if there is if there is unallocated revenue that could go to reserves. I don't know that it has bearing on the decision regarding the tax rate. And I would like to make sure that administration has enough time to be able to properly research it and bring us back correct information to make it potentially $430,000 decision. I would ask administration, does it matter at what point during the year a direction is given to allocate money to this reserve or that reserve?
Through the chair to all of the committee, no, it is at the discretion of council, normally done through budget time, but completely able to do it at other times.
Certainly.
That being said, I can't support it. I want to make sure that admin has enough time to properly get into it and get us and make sure that they're doing correct moves to us. And since the timeline really doesn't matter if it happens a week from now or a month from now, I won't support it that way. If the dates change, I definitely will.
Mary, listen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a clarifying question for Councillor Taylor. I'm looking at the Hinton Community 2024 Budget Guide, which is the source you've referenced here, and it clearly states on page 7 that transfers to reserves from budget 2024 adopted 7 December 2023 is $3,194,647. With that information, I fail to see where you're finding this $400,000 discrepancy, unless you're perhaps looking under the 2023 numbers, which does have a $2.791 million figure to it. But that's a previous budget year, not the budget we just passed.
Yeah,
Can you clarify where you're getting these numbers?
Yeah, I was looking at two sources. I was looking at handout information that we got during the budget process, and I was looking at this information here. So, yeah, that's why I agree that sorting out these, see if there is see if this $430,000 is not a mistake, it's real. I believe that it is.
I have to continue to ask where you're finding this $430,000 number. The document that you just told us you referenced to find 2.7 million in transfers to.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Point of order.
I'd like a ruling on the relevance of what Mayor Nissen's saying. It's not relevant to the motion that's before us where Councillor Taylor is getting his numbers. The motion is to provide clarity on whether the numbers are accurate.
So what I would like to do right now is go to Ms. Borvo, because I think she can.
No, I'm sorry. Can you rule on the point of order, please?
I would need assistance on ruling. First time I've ever had to rule on something like this.
May I speak to relevance, Madam Chair?
Sir, see anyone?
Thank you through the chair. I think, I think your decision as the chair at this point in time is that whether you want to continue the line of question as to where the information came from and to why the motion Councillor Taylor put forward, where he got that information or why he's asked the question. The point of order is whether that's relevant to the motion and gaining clarity on that piece of information.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to say right now that I feel that the conversation is not relative to Councillor Taylor's motion.
Okay,
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Through to the rest of the committee, on December the 7th, we did come forward with 2.872 to reserves, and that was plus we added the contributions, I believe, through the library, which was approximately another 104. So that's, I believe, the discrepancy that's being discussed. So it should be a relatively easy matter of getting to the bottom of where that came from and the carryovers that contributed towards it.
Ms. Marvel?
Through the chair, exactly what the CEO Panasic said, it does have to do with how the adjustment for the reserves for the library was handled, and rather than try to stumble through it here unprepared in this forum, I appreciate the opportunity to bring a report back that committee can follow.
I do want to ask you, is having the report come back on the 16th, is that a rush job for you?
Through to all of committee, I feel I'll be able to pull the information together.
Councillor Taylor?
Hearing that, I won't change that because it sounds like information could come. What I'm interested in is there is a difference to know about it before we make a decision on the utility rate bylaw discussion. Because that helps affect that rate, and that's the rate that I'm concerned of. If it's a big number, then we could make some savings for the citizens. If it's a small number, then it's not significant. That's the real timing issue, I think.
CAO and then Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Chair. The motion, we can certainly provide some clarity on this question. It doesn't mean that council will have to make a motion on this particular item. On this stage, we could always have that discussion as a part of tax rate bylaw or the reserve strategy. You know, we can certainly have the information available. It doesn't mean that we need to make a decision on moving reserves at that point in time.
Councillor Haas,
Yeah, I just want to, Madam Chair, I request that we call this the question, please.
you just wanted to what?
Call it the question, please.
You want to call the question on? I'll call the question that committee direct administration to bring back a report by April 16th, 2024 on the transfer of reserves that was adopted on December 7th, 2023 and the rate that that was approved on April 9th, 2024. Council, please vote no. And that is carried with 2 against, and that would be Councillor Stashik and Councillor Chambers. Also, anything else on this before we move on? Any more discussion? Jeez. Sounds like Christmas is coming.
It is.
And we're moving on to item 5.7, and that is the 2024 the capital project plan. And that's page 101 on your agenda. CEO, I'll turn that over to Edmund.
Thank you, Chair, and I've done that over to Mr. Bull as well.
Chair, and my last item on the agenda this evening, the capital project plan is being presented to all of you for information. The reason why it is not coming forward for an amendment is simply because the additional capital project, the work on the Switzer Booster station has already gone through council. So we already have our permission to expend those funds as needed. The document included with the report has been left color coded, which we've done for administrative purposes to give an idea of where the funding is coming from. You will see this same format moving forward in a project report as we move throughout the year. And upon completion of the 2023 audit process, we will be moving forward with the proposed reserve policy. And this final page where the reserve fund forecast is included is really just the starting point for those. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Council, questions for administration? And Councilor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take the recommended action that committee accept this report for information. Thank you.
And council, we do have any direction on the fly. Councilor Haas.
Yeah, I guess, is this the time to ask where we're at with some of these projects? Cause, you know, there's been RFPs going out and I'm just curious, is this the right time or is it later to be a more opportune time to ask?
Through the committee, I believe administration would appreciate the opportunity for to get audit done and then bring forward a report that has a complete status update on all the projects. At this point in time, I'd only be able to give you the ones that I'm knowledgeable about.
Okay,
So rather reach out to departments, if that's agreeable to committee.
absolutely. If that's, you know, on the agenda for the future, that'd be great. So that's all I want. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sir, so council, we do have direction on the floor. Any more discussion on this before I call the question? I see nothing. The committee accept this report for information. Please vote no. And that is carried. Council, any more discussion on this before we move on? And we're gonna move on to council reports. And we're gonna start with Mayor Nissen. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a lot to report this week. I am at the Economic Developers Association conference this week, and next Tuesday I should have more to report from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not much to report, but I have a Beaver Boardwalk Oversight Committee meeting tomorrow evening. We'll be discussing wayfinder signs. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor McGowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing too much to report, except that I will be meeting with the mayor and administration later this week to discuss procedural bylaw working groups.
Alternate. Thank you. And Councilor Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not too much, but I did want to give a little bit of a shout out. Attended the Hinton Minor Hockey year-end awards banquet. Very well done, very well attended. It was great to see all the kids and families that were out. The MC did a great job of talking about the amount of support and volunteers that were in the community to keep Hinton Minor Hockey going. It was just a really well done event, so thought I'd give a little shout out to them.
Thank you. Councilor Taylor.
Nothing to report.
And Councilor Sasha.
Madam Chair, I have nothing to report.
Thank you all. So what I have to report is tomorrow I'm going to be traveling to Sudbury to attend the first ever summit for attraction and retention of parent professionals. So municipalities from all over are going to be there, and I'm hoping to bring back a lot of good information to Hinton. I will be coming back for Friday because we'll be having our FCSS spring meeting in Marlborough on Friday, so I'll be attending that. Last week I attended the youth adult meeting, the meeting that determines the agenda for that meeting. They've got a lot on the agenda. And one other thing I wanted to say is we did being on the attraction and retention committee, we did give our first welcome basket to a locum, a doctor, and he was pleasantly surprised getting that welcome card and getting that small gift. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. And now I'll turn this over to CAO.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, but it doesn't appear that our monthly report showed up on the agenda, so I'll make sure that that's emailed out to council and included on next Tuesday's council meeting for the rest of the community.
Thank you very much. Jen, anything? So with that, I need a motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Councilor Haas.
I'd like to make the motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion to go into closed session, that committee, meeting in closed session at 8:21 PM. Please vote now. And that is carried. And I'm gonna call for a short break before we go.